What's going on, man?
Howdy. How's it hanging?
It's going well. It's going well. It's been a while.
Well, you had a child, and there's a pandemic.
Yeah, I know. It's like within 2 months, I have a kid. The end of the world's happening. My presidential candidate drops out. I don't know what the
Our
hell's gonna happen.
presidential candidate.
No, you've always been a Biden bro.
Oh, that's not even a thing.
It is now. No, sorry, Biden boomer.
Yeah, Biden boomer. Okay, boomer.
Oh man, that's funny as hell. Yeah, so a lot of stuff to talk about. So just for people that will be listening, we are going to be a little bit more consistent with the release dates of our episodes. So basically, every Monday we'll be releasing a new episode. So first thing on your new commute to work on Monday morning, you can go ahead and listen. But now that's
the
not
walk.
a thing. There is
the walk
no
from the bed to the coffee pot.
Yeah. Put that in your GPS.
Yeah, facts. For real.
But yeah, because you're working from home and I'm working from home. I mean, we're pretty fortunate to work for companies that didn't lay us off and actually allow us to work from home. So that's been pretty nice.
Yeah, it is pretty nice. We're essential, I guess.
Yeah, essential personnel. Yeah, that makes us feel really great. Self-esteem increased.
Yeah, that's something like that.
Oh man, so lots to talk about, but obviously before we get into any major important content, the most important content is beer of the week. So I'm curious what you got.
Well, you would think, since there's an isolation and all this stuff, that you would be like going out less, but I actually find myself going to Total Wine a couple times a week.
There you go.
Like that's me and my fiance.
Oh, there you
go. That's date night. We like to go to Total Wine and just walk up and down the aisles. So I should have prepared because I knew we were doing this, but I didn't get anything punny. But I do have you'll like this. I have a Sycamore Mountain Candy.
A Sycamore Mountain Candy.
Yeah, it's an IPA, Sycamore Brewing.
Yeah,
It's pretty good. It's probably the most popular one, I'd say.
Yeah, to me, it's like such a bad name for the beer.
It is a bad name, but it's good.
Yeah, I hate that name. When the first time, I think it was Lee Byers. I don't know if anyone's heard about him, but Lee
Shout
Byers.
out.
Yeah. He was the one that recommended it to me, and I was like, dude, I don't want that drink. Like, I don't want to I'm too embarrassed to order that from the bartender, like a mountain candy. It doesn't sound.
They know what it is.
But it actually tastes great. I actually really liked it, and I don't like a lot of IPAs, but I did like that one.
It's good. To that end, back when we could go out and order from a bartender, there was supposed to be a really great UFC fight just yesterday.
Oh, I know. God.
And it didn't happen.
It almost happened. Dana White almost made it happen, but
he almost,
he had a private island lined up.
I think he still does. Everything's just really disappointing. I have no sports. Sports and like going out were like 70% of my life, and it's just gone.
Now you have to actually sit down and like talk with your fiance. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
That's new news as well. You got engaged, so I had a baby and you got engaged, so life's moving on.
We made 2 major life jumps and didn't do a podcast for 2 months, but I think we're ready to roll. There's no excuses now. There's nothing else to do.
I mean, hell, we should be doing a podcast every day at this rate.
Well, I guess I was going to say the flip side is there's less political content. It is all coronavirus all the time.
Yeah, it is all the time. I mean, and what's been hard for me, so I actually moved into my new house recently, had a baby, and started this work from home stuff. So I've been out of the political loop, it felt like, and then as soon as I started getting more and more into it, it's just about the virus, just over and over and over and over again. And it's like, well, dude, I haven't even seen Biden talk for like, I don't even know how long. The guy's not really, other than his. I didn't mean that as like a slam, although he's God, I guess we'll get into it later, but I'm genuinely curious if the more he gets out in public and the more people realizes that he has a serious case of what I would say is dementia, is like if he's actually going to end up getting replaced by the DNC with someone else, because I don't know how you run that, man. I don't know how, like, I don't know.
Well, I guess the flip side is he doesn't have to be in public now, though, because he can't. You know what I mean?
Not until the debates, or not until later. I mean, unless
I guess eventually.
But that's the best thing too late. To Biden. This quarantine stuff where he just gets to sit in his house and just kind of socialize with his family and not have to do a bunch of news stuff or campaign trail was like the best thing that happened to his campaign since it launched, man.
Oh yeah, I saw.
It's
So I don't know if you watched the video where I guess it was virtual, whatever, where Bernie was endorsing him,
I can't do that.
and
It hurt too
I'm
much.
sure it hurts too much. But Bernie was like, they were talking on the, you know,
Yeah,
webcam. Actually, I was watching. I hate to admit, I was watching a Ben Shapiro video about this on
there we
YouTube.
there we
Yeah,
go.
I know, and he was just saying he made a joke that he couldn't believe that Bernie and Biden got the WebEx set up successfully.
Yeah, that's true, man. They're old, man.
Yeah,
And I think, didn't Biden end up reading off like a teleprompter in his conversation with Bernie? Like it's just a casual conversation like we're
yeah.
doing now. He ends up reading off a teleprompter because he gets lost.
And it's not like, oh, we're just chatting. Like, hey, you guys are gonna have a conversation, and Bernie is gonna endorse you. Like, this is
Yeah,
how it's gonna go.
dude. Oh my god. I honestly, there was a good moment there. I thought Bernie had a good shot. I didn't think he'd win South Carolina, so that wasn't a surprise. Biden won by more than I was expecting, but I mean, it was still pretty
Hmm.
solidly always Biden's. But damn, that Monday that came after South Carolina, right before Super Tuesday, when Pete dropped out, Amy dropped out, and Beto O'Rourke endorsed Biden, and they all three did at the same time. That was like a huge. I didn't expect that all to happen within 24 to 48 hours, and maybe I should have, and maybe I'm naive when it comes to following politics in that regard. But that to me was a shock, and that after I saw the states vote on Super Tuesday and Bernie lost as bad as he did, I was like, damn, he needs to
Yeah,
suspend his
that
campaign
was
now.
it.
It's over.
So, if I read this a couple days after Obama came out and endorsed Biden, I read this article, one of the like 8 political articles that's been in the New York Times in the last month, and it was basically kind of walking through Obama's role in the primary, which I mean, he wasn't on the forefront, but he certainly had some influence in the background.
Yeah,
And he told Pete something. This is an exact quote, but he told him something to the effect of, "You're never going to have more power than the day you drop out."
yeah,
Which to me seems like he probably milked a cabinet position or something to that effect out of Biden
yeah. No, I agree.
to endorse him.
I so for me, from what I read and understood, was that on Sunday, so South Carolina voted Saturday. Joe Biden called Pete on Sunday, and Obama called Pete on Sunday. So they called him the same day. And one of the things Obama
Mm,
told Pete was specifically that you never have as much leverage as you do the day, right before you drop out with the momentum that
right.
Pete has, which is in my mind. I mean, if someone says, look, this jewelry store just got robbed and you found a guy outside with a bag, a mask, and a gun, connect the damn dots. It's not that complicated. And so to me, the way I take that is when Obama's telling that to Pete, it's basically like saying, hey, I, as the leader of the Democratic Party, or the most recent, leader of it, essentially, I am, highly suggesting for your political career that you should drop out and endorse Biden and use that for your own political advancement at this time because it's crucial you do that. Because I think my personal opinion on it is that Obama knew the winds were blowing away from Joe and for Bernie, and so he was trying to step in to shift that momentum. And so I think that's what that call was designed to do. And I think Pete wasn't a dummy. I think he understood that as well. So it would be very interesting to know if that position will get announced, like even before the election happens, or if we won't even know unless Biden wins what that position that was promised was.
Probably the latter. I think they
Yeah,
typically wait, except for vice president. I don't think Pete's going to be the vice presidential nominee, but
I don't know.
I think for all this, I mean, I really like Obama. He's probably my second favorite Democrat. I don't know if
Yeah,
Bernie's a Democrat, but I'm putting him in there. And I mean, for all the like public talk of he didn't want to influence, Biden
yeah,
was his preferred candidate, which is fine. You have a preferred
yeah,
candidate. He was a preferred candidate of the establishment, but
yeah,
he certainly tried to wield his influence towards Biden. And I just
yeah.
wish, like, if you were going to pick an establishment candidate, like, there
Go
was
with
three
someone
good
else.
options,
Damn.
right?
Yeah, I would have
I don't
rather.
know why.
I don't know, man. It frustrates me because it's like I I don't know. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of some of this stuff than I need to. But so this is my view on the matter is one, Obama should have come out and endorsed Joe from the get go in my opinion, if he's going to endorse anyone at all, because it was his VP. I mean, it's only right. It's no one's going to view that as bias. I mean, it just makes sense that you would do that. Now, if you're not going to, like he did, I actually respect that decision to say, look, I want the people, the voice of the people, to hear. To select their own candidate, independent of my influence. Let the cards fall where they fall. I like that decision. I think that's pretty respectable, actually. Now, that's only respectable though if you're not trying to, essentially set up the deck behind the scenes the way you want it to be in, and choose when to come in when it makes sense to push the flow towards your guy, because then that just, to me and to your average person, it comes across as very slimy and kind of, even if you had good intentions in the beginning, your principles weren't strong enough to carry all the way through, and once you saw you were about to lose, you abandoned your principles and decided to yada yada. And like I said, I might be making a bigger deal out of this because at the end of the day, politics is just kind of making deals behind the scenes in a lot of ways, and that it's just how it is. But I really didn't understand why he never endorsed Biden, and then why he stepped in the ways he did step in. Why not step in for someone like, I guess there wasn't anyone else that had that broad appeal though. I mean, Mayor Pete and Amy didn't have the African American support, so
no, they didn't.
I don't think Obama could have. Yeah, I don't see Obama as being able to lift him out of that so much.
No, I guess so. Obama's thing, he's cautious to like a fault. And I don't think he wanted to be perceived as influencing it in any way, like I said, but because he publicly didn't intervene, but you're right, like that's a two-way street. Oh, you didn't intervene publicly during anything. You didn't really say anything at all. There were a couple like leaked comments about how he didn't want Bernie to be the nominee, but
exactly. Well, leaks. It's like, did he want those leaked, or
I mean, he's a smart guy.
He's not dumb.
But the establishment didn't want him, and like now this is I was a little upset. Now I'm kind of, coming to terms with it. But this is the second time now in the last two Democratic primaries where the establishment's influenced the votes towards a preferred candidate. They're 0 for 1.
Yeah. I know. Even Hillary Clinton comes out and says, "Yeah, Joe Biden's building the exact same coalition I had." I'm like, "Are you guys that dumb that you don't like?" Dude,
but like that's like Hillary. Years. But like at least with Hillary, like obviously way more negatives, I guess, than Biden. I don't think you perceive. Like people don't hate Biden, I feel like the way they hated Hillary. So that's something. Yeah. But like Hillary was like could talk. Like, I mean, she's
that's
smart.
The difference. People hated Hillary, but she was she could talk and articulate what she wanted to. I feel like people just feel bad for Biden to the point where they're like, there's no way in hell I'd want him running anything, because he just isn't all there. So it's a different type of negative,
Yeah, and I could, like, this time 4 years ago, I didn't worry about Hillary debating Trump. Like, I didn't worry that she, like, and it just, now it's like, you're going to put, I guess if you're who is the establishment, I guess the Democratic Party leaders, you really think you can put Biden up there with Trump, like, one-on-one?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I kind of made the comment earlier on, and I'm not new to the political world completely, but at the same time, really, it's only been the last 4 years or so that I've been following this pretty regularly. And so I don't think there's ever been I shouldn't say it hasn't ever been a time because I haven't looked into it, but I would be interested to see what the precedence is or what the likelihood is of them having to swap Biden out for someone else, because dude, I don't think people realize how bad Biden actually is when he's given more longer format venues where he has to actually talk longer than just his let's restore the soul of America by giving us dignity and yada yada yada. There's nothing we can't do except for all the things Bernie says, and so I don't know, man. It'll be interested to see if they swap him out or if they just try to run with him.
I don't think there is a precedent for it, but obviously unprecedented times. I think something would have to happen that's not already happened, that he gets replaced. But I mean,
do you see him beating Trump? I mean, before the economy crashed, I would say definitely no. Now with the economy being the way it is, maybe, but I don't.
That's the chance, right? I guess, but if you're the Democratic Party, I think we like to think like, I don't say we. I guess people that are critical of the Democratic Party, the thought process is they're elitist and they know what's best for us, and why would they try to do the same thing as 4 years ago? But I guess if I'm them, the reasoning is, you are so frightened of losing to Trump again. I mean, legitimately so. We don't want him to be president. But you're so frightened of losing to Trump again, and you need, who was the only candidate in the race who really had a large amount of minority support, or I should say black support, was Biden. So I guess the thought process is, well, we're going to have to make it work. I think it's coming from a fear position, but like,
I guess it depends on how much of a benefit of the doubt you want to give leadership. That's where I always come back to is I'm like, because in my mind, it's always about retaining power. So what candidate can they support that will help them retain power if they were to win? So like,
and
if
I agree
Biden
with that,
wins,
but
they can do that.
But I guess it comes back to the African American support, because I was going to say, like, Pete and Amy are I wouldn't worry about them debating Trump, would you? Like,
I'd love to see Pete debate Trump, and I don't even like Pete that much personally. I think he's actually someone I would use as an example as someone who's very intelligent, knows the importance of principles and character, but is willing to bend it at a moment's notice if the political winds go a certain way, and he'll do it in a very savvy way that you don't even catch it unless you're very attentive to policy detail and other items. So I don't personally like Pete, but he's very intelligent. He's very smart, and him on the debate stage would have been great with Trump, or Amy would have been fine. Anyone would have been fine almost. I can't even think of anyone that would have done that bad against Trump necessarily, other than Biden. Biden just can't talk for very long, man.
And so now we're all forced into a similar position between two candidates we don't want. For the presidency, and also, I don't know how much we have to get into this now because it's developing, but like, how are we going to vote? Are we going to vote by mail? Are we going to go?
Oh, I know. I've been meaning to read up on that. I feel like it'll be in person. I think the more the information that releases about this coronavirus stuff, it's just going to be kind of like, look, we just got to live with it and handle it as it comes as much as we possibly can, and shift ways we do society in the short term. But there's certain things that are still going to be necessary, and voting is going to be one of those. And they'll probably take certain precautions to make it a little less, cluttered in a sense. But honestly, we can't not have an election. So it's a matter of, how do you go about it?
I think so. I try the news, a little bit of tangent, but I do want to return to Biden and Bernie. But the news is so much corona. I mean, I'm looking at the New York Times right now, and it's antibody testing, De Blasio and Trump fighting, China. You know what I mean? Coronavirus op-eds, nursing homes, etc. But a lot of sports has also stopped. And I said at the beginning, sports and bars are 70% of my life. But I think the thing they keep coming back to, sporting events, obviously a lot of people, is like they need testing, and we don't really have that. So I think I'm optimistic in the sense, like, once you get the mass testing, I think that would alleviate a lot of the problems, because you test people. If they're positive, you don't let them into whatever the venue is. I think voting will be fine. But like I said, if voting's fine and then you have Biden and Trump debating, one of them standing 6 feet apart and there's no audience.
You got to have, so let's say they do voting like the way we've been doing it, with a couple, different elements where they try to keep you distance from one another, or you have to have a mask to vote, or whatever the heck it is. You need an enthusiastic base to show up in those circumstances, because honestly, it's hard enough to get most people to vote. They already don't want to do it. Just like you don't really want to go to church, or you don't really want to go to the gym, but you kind of make yourself do it because you feel like it's their, duty or whatever. It's really easy to convince people not to do things. So if that are in that camp or way of thinking. So, if you're supposed to go to the gym on Monday morning, but you had to stay up Sunday night late, you're going to use that as an excuse not to go Monday morning every time. So to me, same way as voting, no one's enthusiastic about voting for Biden. I would say 80% of people voting for Biden are simply because they think he has the best chance at beating Trump. And so it's really dictated to how enthusiastic are people about defeating Donald Trump. That's really what is going to be tied to how much turnout there is for Biden. And I don't think that's enough to get him to victory. It's that level, that group of people that we have to rely on to be enthusiastic about defeating Donald Trump, so they'll turn out for Joe Biden. I don't think they're going to show up with this coronavirus stuff on very high numbers, whereas Trump's base doesn't even believe the virus is even a legitimate thing. They're going to go out to the polls or to the voting booths in high numbers. So I don't see this working out.
Protest. I don't say the people. Not all Trump supporters are idiots. Most of them, but the ones protesting are especially so. But you have Biden, again, not as offensive as Hillary, but like just different things that are bad. And it's like, I guess my thing is, I'm definitely gonna vote for Biden, but I don't even want to say I'm voting against Trump, right? I mean, that's the vote.
Yeah.
Because everything you're saying about, and I don't know if you will vote for him, but everything you're saying about him, like, there's no argument against it. It's just like he can't talk. Like that's just a fact.
Yeah, I know.
And I like it's just.
Yeah, I don't know.
How do you come out for that?
When it comes to voting and who you vote for and what philosophy you vote off of, I go back and forth on a lot of different ways of thinking about it because I can kind of get arguments from all sides of the aisle in terms of, I mean, a lot of people I know that vote for Trump, I could actually, I think, make a fairly convincing argument for a vote for Trump. It would ignore a lot of details, obviously, because, you kind of have to in order to support that wholeheartedly. But I think I could still, if I had to talk to your average person who doesn't watch politics very much, I could make a very easy case for Donald Trump to get your vote, in my opinion. Likewise, I could make a case for voting for Joe Biden to get Donald Trump, who's an extremely arrogant and dangerous president, out of the office. Or I could make a case for saying, look, there's no reason to vote for either of these guys. And so I understand a lot of the elements of all the arguments. So I always have to go back to what's my philosophy when it comes to who I'm going to vote for. And it's difficult because I don't operate under the belief that I very rarely will ever vote for someone simply as a vote against someone else. That never worked for me. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. It's just in my mind, I'm like, I don't operate that way. Now, if my vote was the only vote that mattered in the world and my vote decided the whole election, I would think through this very differently. But because I don't, and my vote doesn't carry that much weight, then the only philosophy I know to vote for is vote for someone who supports the policies that I support. And that's where it gets really tricky because Joe Biden just, man, there's not very many issues that I line up with him on overall. The only reason I even consider the Democratic Party, to be honest with you, is because of the Bernie Sanders wing of that. So it's very difficult for someone like me I will probably end up voting for Joe Biden, to be honest with you, but I could easily be swayed just not to vote at all.
I think, yeah, and I think there's a, I'll speak to that in a second, but there's also a percentage of people that they're going to swing that one step further and vote for Trump.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Weird.
And so that happened in 2016. That is weird, but
yeah. I mean, I kind of get it though. If you want like an outsider that's going to burn, I get like the 2016 dynamic. They wanted someone that was an outsider they thought wasn't bought, that could do their own thing, and they were going to take a risk on Trump or Bernie, one of the two, And since Bernie lost, then that's going to go to Trump. And I kind of get that dynamic a little bit. It's different this time around, though, because you've seen how Trump governs and how he is. I feel like you have more to work from.
I guess you have the thing is, like, if you're someone that supported Bernie and now if you supported him twice and now twice the Democratic Party has said no, we don't want you. And despite, he really looked like he was going to win. They did stop him. They had to coalesce around this time. I don't think he would have won South Carolina, but Biden won.
But the rest he would have done better. Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, when Trump goes on Twitter and he says, the Democratic Party establishment has like denied your voice once again, blah, 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 blah. He has a point. It's like, come vote for Trump and Republicans. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
So,
see, that's not where I go. So my mind doesn't go, oh, well, screw the Democratic establishment. I'm going to go stick a finger in their eye by voting for the Republicans. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it's like, what poison do you take? Well, I don't want to take either, so I'll just step away from this game that I'm trying to be forced into. So I don't go that way, but there is a large part of me that's like, look, if I support things like Medicare for all, I like the idea of a living wage. I like the idea of ending wars on an international scale. I like the idea of making education or college education a lot more I would say tuition free. I haven't developed that part of my framework more, but I like the concept of a lot of I like the concept of a lot of maternity leave for women, or a lot of things that Bernie developed. I like a lot of that. And Biden he was straight up asked, hey, if Medicare for all got passed through the House and Senate, which would be a miracle in and of itself, would you pass it as president? He's like, hell no, I wouldn't pass that. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? When those numbers are out there, at least 80 to 90% of that is, so I don't. So my mind automatically goes, well, if Biden doesn't support my policies, why would I support Biden? I mean, that's how my brain works. But there's a case to be made. Well, he's closer to supporting my way of thinking than Trump is, so it's better to vote for him. And then the people around him might be able to push him that direction. You have precedents and presidents like Lyndon Johnson, who might have been more of a centrist, but ended up being more progressive on some certain things because he was pushed that direction. So I don't know. I could go either way.
I guess, like I said, I'm going to vote for him. My rationale is it is like you only have two choices. Trump's way worse. That doesn't take away all the negatives about Biden, but it's like he's going to put, I guess it's the people around him, right? And I think Joe Rogan now has this clip, you know what I'm talking about, where he says he'd rather vote for Trump than Biden. Rogan seems like the type to just not vote at this point, but he has a large following. But he says, at this point, you're just expecting Biden to like put his cabinet around him and its experts. But like, I will take all of those people just telling him what to do than what Trump is just tweeting. You know what I mean? You only get the two choices. But I guess the deeper issue is this: it's like Democrats have to play this game where they have to, be centrist, and then they have this progressive wing, and like the Republicans just can be as crazy as they want, and they pay no penalty. It's just crazy to me.
To me, so I'm going to say two things, and they kind of take us in two different directions. So maybe I should only say one of them. But one is the Republican Party plays to its base very well. They want the wall. They want taxes cut. They have very few things. They care about abortion, and they stick hard on those things. Think of what the Democratic establishment policy wants. You can't even name anything. There's nothing. I guess Affordable Care Act, but you don't even really know why people want that. They just like Obama, and it's called Obamacare, so they get behind Obama. That's really the depth of that logic, because the whole program itself is actually a very conservative idea, or is birthed as a conservative idea. So it's not even that. That's their liberal idea. That was a compromise of a compromise of a compromise to try to get Republicans on, but Republicans are way smarter at politics than Democrats are, so they just started unloading on Obamacare like it's communism 2.0 essentially, and it ended up winning them big and a lot of elections big time because they shredded Obamacare because it did have some serious flaws. And the Democratic establishment, they don't have that enthusiastic base for certain policies behind them, so they can't go crazy and do things. They really can't, because they don't have that base behind them. And if you look at polling, like Medicare, like government run healthcare, and it was popular in every single state, like the first, I don't know how many states, maybe I'm exaggerating, but like the first 15 to 20 states that voted, every single one of them, the majority of people said, yes, we're fine with government run healthcare. And I guarantee you that would even be higher now after this virus hit. Because people realize how bad our healthcare system are. I mean, how many people have lost their jobs?
Employer-based, baby.
It's awful. It's so bad. So, I mean, all of that to say, the reason the Republican Party can kind of be crazy and get away with it, in my opinion, is because they stick to very specific issues that their base cares about, and they're very good at sticking to the message from Donald Trump to the Senate to the House to Fox News. That combined element, man, that's golden. They are so good at lockstepping.
Yeah, Fox News. They do lockstep. I think the other thing is, you're right. Democrats are, I guess, ideological rights. So it's broad things: equality, justice, etc. Which again,
what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, to me, I don't know.
But the other thing is like this. I think you've probably seen this thrown around, but I think Democrats have won the popular vote in 6 of the last 7 presidential elections.
Sure.
Save for Bush in 2004. So there's like an argument
because of the war. Oh, that's the only reason. So, I mean, you could say
so there's like, you're talking, a generation almost, right? And there's but the Democrats, but they know the rules and they still continue to lose. Yeah. So that's the thing is like, yes, it's a rigged system. Totally. It should not be that way. Yeah. But if you know what you're getting into and you still pick candidates and policies or strategies, even in a broader sense, that lose, what does that say about you? And it makes it hard. Like, as someone who's like defending them, it's like, it's hard to do that because you just keep making stupid decisions.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back. I mean, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Like Michael Corleone, Godfather 3. I can't get out.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm kind of new to the political world in a sense because it's only been the last 4 years I've been following it. So I'm still developing my own system. Like one of the things I'm setting up in my house is like an area where I can really do deeper dive studies into specific issues, because this is kind of the other thing I was going to mention just a second ago, but it really frustrates me when people like to paint, and rightly so 99% of the time, but paint Trump and the Republican Party as this, this overly corrupt and, purely in it for themselves. And they, caged children all the time, and they're just this evil group of people. And that's the only message you hear about Republicans all the time. But then the Democrats, well, they're like the parents telling the kids to knock it off, and they're the sane ones, and they're they really know they have integrity and principles they try to stick to, and they're just trying to clean up the mess the Republicans create. And that's the narrative you just get fed over and over and over. And like this happened a couple years ago, but the whole I'll use two examples to prove my point. If Trump missteps even a little bit, it gets put on the front page of every news outlet for the most part. I mean, everyone's super happy about it. They're like giddy that the stock market was failing because they're like, oh, Trump lost all his gains that he had. Oh, poor, Trump. You're like, what the hell is wrong with you? And they're doing everything. If you watch CNN's reporting, it's so bad, man, when it comes to how clearly vindictive they are against Donald Trump. I'm someone who has very few kind things to say about Donald Trump. So I'm not saying a lot of the criticism isn't well found. I'm just saying it's clear about where the bias actually is. Joe Biden, on the other hand, he has a clearly credible sexual assault allegation, doesn't even get a word basically. Or if it does get a word, it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't believe all women anymore, And
did you read the New York Times article? The thing about I brought up the New York Times, okay, but the New York Times did a kind of investigation in the investigation. I don't know if you read that.
I read bits of pieces of certain. I don't think maybe not the one you're talking about, but I did read some stuff from New York Times a week ago or so. I don't know.
I think it was last weekend. But in regards to Joe Biden's sexual assault allegation.
Yeah.
Which, just reading it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your tangent, but I thought it was worth.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I hate to be that guy, but it's like this is. It totally sounds like something he would do because you think of the good old boys Senate and stuff like this, but then they talk to people that are, I forget the name of the accuser. I don't know if you know it.
Tara Reid.
Yeah, Tara Reid. People that were around her say they didn't hear anything about it. And it's it puts you in that position where you're like, well, it seems like,
So yeah, there's two. Yeah, I agree with you. There's two separate conversations that need to be had, though. One is how do you choose if someone is credible or not? What's that process as a society we're going to believe? Believing all women is obviously ridiculous. You can't just believe all women because they're a woman. Humans in general are very deceptive and can lie for their own personal gain. And since women are human,
especially
that force.
Someone's in a position of power and has money.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's plenty of incentive to lie. At the same time, there's plenty of incentive not to tell the truth either because of the repercussions that'll happen if you do step up and speak out. So it's a very hard balancing game about how we as society have to deal with that. I'm all for that. But what's clear as day is if Brett Kavanaugh had an accuser, it got everyone's attention. And I mean, an FBI investigation, all this stuff. If it's Joe Biden, it's like, hey, the stakes are too high. We can't lose to Donald Trump, so no one talk about this. And it's clear based on the reporting that that's how it's handled.
And the circumstances are really similar. Not the exact circumstances, but just the story is similar to the same thing with Kavanaugh years ago. But Kavanaugh also was not in a position of power when his thing happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's
it's even worse, Joe Biden.
Right. But Kavanaugh got, that was
if you're going to rank them.
That was 4 cycles of news.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was huge. And it was a big deal. And this is why, and I'm going to throw this on top of this, and because I really want to deep dive into this, because I think the Democrats are they're so bad at introspection in terms of where they have gone wrong, in my opinion. And so, for example, when it broke that Trump had kids in cages, everyone was freaking out. And then within 48 hours, it figured out that the photos that were circulating were actually from Obama's presidency. And man, it went mute in a night. No one was talking about it anymore for a little bit. Because I very distinctly remember this as the reporting was unfolding. I was like, man, this is all over. Now it's nowhere. Why? And I started looking into it. I'm like, oh, well, that's convenient, because no one tried to hold Obama's feet to the fire in certain ways that they're trying to hold Trump to. And that's why I understand a lot of the frustration of the Republican Party and Donald Trump, where they're like, fine, I'm going to go balls to the walls and just accuse everyone of being fake news. And, they're all in it, have this vendetta against me. And I'm just the greatest person ever walked the earth. And screw them. We're all winners.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you just hit this. It's not the right choice. That's why I like Bernie, because I think he had a lot of characters and principles, regardless of the crappy circumstances within D.C. and the political world. But there's a very large part of me that gets very frustrated with the amount of hypocrisy and criticism of Donald Trump and the Republican Party that never gets levied against the Democratic Party either, or you're somehow, compromising the Democrats' ability to win against Trump because you're bringing up truths about the dirt, the skeletons in their closet. That infuriates me because I have no allegiance to any party. My political philosophy is stick up for policies and principles that help the most amount of people. I don't care what party fits in that category at any given time. I'm going to get behind whatever policy or principle that helps the most amount of people and helps govern in a more efficient way. And so I have no allegiance to the Democratic Party. The whole vote blue no matter who, like, bullshit. Couldn't give a damn less, about that. So I'm having a really hard time trying to work through a lot of the elements when it comes to where I find myself politically. Like, it's very, very difficult in this time between Biden and Trump.
I guess the thing with Trump is, obviously, it's very easy to point out his numerous flaws.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like the things, you can't have it both ways, right? I know the kids in cages thing. I know Obama did it. Obviously, I don't think he did it. And I'm not as versed in this. It's not dominating the news either. So I haven't really thought about it. But I think he kind of put an end to the practice or something to that effect. It wasn't as dramatic. But again, at the end of the day, aren't you splitting hairs?
Yeah.
But
yeah, selective outrage.
Think, right. There's portions of both parties that are going to vote blue, red, no matter what.
Yeah, 100%.
But like I said, it comes back to this with the Democratic Party. Like, you have a president who, he's probably like the worst president in U.S. history, right? At least as far as competence-wise.
Yeah, in certain areas, I agree. Yeah.
But you lost to him.
Yeah. Why did you lose to him? See, that's the thing they don't understand, man. They think they lost him because America's a bunch of racist, idiotic lunatics that just voted behind this con artist.
Well,
that's the
some
extent
of them are.
Well, and that's fair to say that, but it's also fair to say that a lot of people who vote Democrats are dumbasses as well and don't follow politics. They just think the other side's evil, so they're going to vote for a Democrat. So you can find shallow reasoning on either side, and I would argue that it's much more propaganda that gets filtered and more effectively on the right than the left. I see a much stronger propaganda bent on the right, where they can on a dime flip from believing what Trump says in one direction, then he can turn the exact opposite, and they'll go within a dime that same direction. I mean, it's really fascinating to see, or scary, depending on what we're talking about. But I mean, with this allegation for Joe Biden from Tara Reid, you listen to her kind of recollection of what she's willing to say about it. There's no doubt in my mind that it happened. You listen to what she said, and you're like, damn, that definitely happened. That sounds exactly like what Joe Biden would say. I've known enough guys to know that that's stuff guys would do who are in authority. So I have no doubt in my mind that I find her credible and I believe her. So then it becomes, well, I have to support Joe Biden, who's basically a rapist who's supported a lot of war crimes in the last 2 decades, doesn't agree on almost any policy of mine to stop the bad man Donald Trump, who is very boldly accused of and credible of doing the exact same things that Joe Biden has probably done behind the scenes as well. And I'm just
right.
like,
yeah.
This is like,
but I guess yeah, I know. That's the problem. You get these two choices. And the other thing is, like, when it comes back to the accusations, it's like, you're not to put yourself in that position to subject yourself to that kind of public scrutiny to be the accuser. You know what I mean? That woman.
I don't
like, why are you putting yourself through that for fun?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And I mean, there's definitely instances where people get paid to make shit up. I get all that. I totally get all that. But Joe Biden does not strike me as the guy that he would not do this. He just
But there's videos of him, like, touching people, and it's like, it's been a thing for forever.
Did you see the New York Times tweet on this? I mean, it was a joke. I mean, they were like, we've investigated, and there was no credible instances of sexual harassment, except for the numerous instances when he was inappropriately, touched, feeling, and you're like, what? Do you guys not see the irony in your own tweet? Like, come on.
But I guess the thing is, and I think Bernie Sanders made this calculation when he endorsed him, it's like, Biden is, again, less hated than Hillary, and you only get these two choices. And I think that's the flaw of the system, is you have only two, and now
you have 3 options, though. I mean, I firmly believe in not voting. I really do, because here's my belief. This is my philosophy as it stands now. I could be convinced otherwise, but as I stand now, over generations, over decades, you get better candidates if people refuse to vote unless it's a good candidate. That is, to me, a very true statement. If everyone always has to vote the lesser of two evils every single time, you're always going to be stuck with shitty options until the country gets blown up into smithereens. So I'm very interested in people actually withholding their vote until they get a good candidate and then being very loud for that candidate, because then the party goes, well, damn, maybe we should put more of these people up, and it self-corrects over time. Because the way we've been doing it so far, I'm so tired of hearing the lesser of two evils argument. I don't give a damn. That to me.
Well, here's the optimism. Here's the case for it is, okay, so Obama wins 2 elections.
Yeah.
Which, right, just think about the time, like 2 elections, Republicans lose both times. They got crushed. You know what I mean? Like, that's defeating as a party. And as a party, if you're the Democratic Party, and I will say this, when you lose to Trump twice, you should do some soul searching.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that should lead to that same emphasis it got to the Republicans, right? The Republicans lose these 2 elections, and their party gets this, like, I don't know how to describe Trump in good figures, but like, this very extreme figure, but who supported a lot of the things that they've been supporting for a long time and was just saying them. And if the Democratic Party can get that, I don't know who it would be, in 4 years, but the Bernie Sanders-esque candidate who was unapologetic and progressive, I don't want to say radical, but out there.
Yeah.
And, you try it again, and you get to the point where you're like, maybe you do have to try this. But there's a lot of things that can go really bad to get to that point for us in the country.
I agree. And I mean, my thought process is kind of like, I think Obama won because Obama is just one of the most rarest politicians who people like him. People like to listen to him. He seems very personable, intelligent. Even his endorsement of Joe Biden was very political savvy. If you know what buttons that you're expecting a politician to hit to satisfy people behind the scenes, it's very interesting to actually listen to stuff like that, as opposed to people who are not politically informed and they just watch it on a dime. It's a very different thing you're looking for. And so I think Obama won in large part because he is just a very good individually speaker and handles himself very, very well. So I think that's why he won. But the Democratic Party, in my opinion, lost as a whole under his leadership. If you look at the midterms and the repercussions of
they lost terribly.
It was awful. So I don't gauge a party's success by what candidate gets elected so much. So that popular vote you were referencing earlier, about 7 out of the last 8 elections has been the popular vote has gone for the Democratic candidate. I don't know how much I put weight on that. I would be more interested in seeing, maybe the turnout of Congress or something like that. But then you get into gerrymandering, so maybe that's not even that.
But even that, Democrats have won. They usually win the popular vote in congressional races and in Senate races.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it goes back to this: they're winning popular votes in California and New York. And they're losing in the heartland. That's another debate. Is like, why does South Dakota have the same weight as California?
Yeah, no, it
so
is.
That's another problem. But but Republicans have kept, but like they know the system and they've calculated this in such a way that they use it to their advantage. Perhaps they cheat.
Yeah.
But they have the power. And the Democrats don't play like that. And there was a candidate, not that Bernie would cheat, but who was going to, number one, calling this out.
Yeah.
But number two, was going to take the steps to counteract it and play that game, like pack the Supreme Court, give D.C. and Puerto Rico statehood.
Yeah.
And now we get this old guy who can't talk, who molested this woman 20 years ago. And it's the best we can do. Even though we had 4 other people we could have gone with. One who would have been really good. 3 who at least they don't have those negatives.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. It is very, very weird. There's a lot I have to criticize about Bernie, how he handles his campaign, certain positions he takes. I don't see Bernie as the golden boy in the sense that he's perfect, but I don't expect perfection. I expect principles, character, and policies. And he was
principled.
Yeah, he had principles almost to a fault. He could have hit Joe Biden on so many issues, and he chose not to run negative ads. I personally think that's wrong to an extent. I think there's room for negative ads depending on how they're done. I don't think they need to be as dramatic and terrible as as Donald Trump's are. But speaking of that, have you heard Joe Biden's most recent China ad the ad against Joe Biden against Donald Trump? It's interesting. It's so. I follow a wide variety of people on Twitter because I just love seeing I love scrolling from the go communism and socialism, let's reverse it in America to, the libertarian that's wanting to kill all the communists with the Second Amendment, so I like the contrast. It keeps me feeling like I'm crazy or sane in a crazy world. But I heard a lot of people trash talking Biden's new ad as being racist against China. And I listened to it, and I'm like, man, I have to be missing something because it doesn't seem racist to me. But I could easily be overlooking stuff. I don't really know. But it's funny because they basically say Trump. This is so bizarre, man. The ad is basically saying Trump went way too soft on China, and Joe Biden will be way harder on China because this is all China's fault, and they're going to have to take a hard stance against China and stop believing them and actually be very hard stance. And I'm like, didn't you guys 2 seconds ago criticize Donald Trump for being too hard on China and calling him a racist for making this the China virus and everything? And now you're flipping it to where he was too easy on China and too kind and too goody-goody, and you're going to be harder?
I know.
I'm so lost at this point.
First of all, it totally is China's fault that we have this because they tried to cover it up.
Yeah. That shouldn't be controversial to say the country of China and the government of China clearly had a part in this where they should have done better, and it's affected the whole world because they were incompetent.
Right. We call it the Spanish flu, the West Nile virus. Come on. That's the thing about the politically correct liberals. It's like everything is a battle.
Yeah, everything is. There's principles and virtues behind everything, and if God forbid you misspeak of one little direction because you're suddenly a hidden racist, sexist, homophobe, behind the scenes, it's like, oh my God, guys, you got to be a little bit more intelligent than that.
Right. I mean, but I kind of get it. If you're Trump, I'm going to call it the China virus, and they're just going to be mad for 2 days over nothing. It's so easy.
I completely botched something else,
Yeah, and meanwhile, I'm going to do there are policies that the Trump administration and the Republicans have that actually have impacts that don't get covered.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because people want to choose the low-hanging fruit. He says some reporter is dumb and needs to be fired because she's incompetent. They're like, oh my God, he called someone dumb. Meanwhile, he could be doing some of the most atrocious things behind the scenes, but that's boring and too complicated. But he called her dumb, God forbid.
Right.
And it's just that's what frustrates me the most, I think. There's nothing. I would love to see Trump lose, which is the main drive behind considering to vote for Joe Biden, because I would love to see Trump lose. But putting that aside, there is nothing more frustrating than people that just support Joe Biden because he's super polite and calm and just that good old boy. He's just really, blah, blah, blah. And Trump, he's just kind of icky. He just speaks his mind and he's rude. I'm like, guys, come on. There's got to be bigger fish to fry than worrying about someone's decorum in the political realm. It just, that to me is so frustrating to a fault. And I remember a MLK quote I read the other day that I really need to read more of this guy, MLK, because I feel like he had a very good sense of the American culture that I've kind of always felt but never known how to articulate. And one of the quotes he said was something to the effect of, the white American liberal is more concerned with order than they are with justice, and that kind of belief summarizes a lot of how I feel about the liberal left. Is just, they're always concerned about this order and not bigger things like, hey, the whole system is, unjust in a lot of ways. What do we need to do to fix the whole system? Well, let's just make sure we're polite. That'll fix the system. It just blows my mind.
So, but the argument is, and this is what Obama makes, is that most Americans rather see the system changed than blown up. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe 8 years ago when Obama was president, maybe that was that was right. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Sure.
The times we have this president that we've never had before, and there's a reason for that. And again, just coming back to this, there was only one person on the Democratic side who said the system is the problem. I believe Trump is a symptom of that. He's not. It's not like Trump just came to light and all these people started having these thoughts.
Well, that's the thing.
They were there.
The one area. That's definitely one area where I think Obama has miscalculated. Is it's not that people want to see the system blown up, but it's not that they're okay with just tweaks around the edges. If I'm driving a car and I hit the gas and nothing happens, checking on the windshield wiper fluid to see if it's clean doesn't make a damn sense, So at a certain point, you might have to just replace the whole car. You might have to get a new engine, depending on the severity of the problem, you might have to switch it all. And the only reason Trump won is because the situation was a lot worse than I feel like Obama understood, or at least, politically voiced. And that's why Trump won, because it is a lot worse in a lot of ways than people realize.
when it comes to, and that's something Bernie understood, I think. And so it's not a matter of blowing up the system as much as there does need to be very major shifts structurally in certain areas, and no one's making those changes happen, it seems like, within the status quo establishment of both parties.
Right, and it's just like there's all these things that other countries do better than us: healthcare, education, paid sick leave, maternity leaves.
Yeah.
Right, and it's just like guns. One that climate change, but guns is like one that I just can't wrap my guns and healthcare. Like I just can't wrap my head around the thought process. But it's like, and our system just doesn't allow to get even close to that. And then you get like incrementalism with like Joe Biden. It's like, oh, we'll have a public option. Well, that's number one. That's never going to pass. Yeah. Number two, if it did, it would go bankrupt because it would just be poor people on it.
Yeah, it would just be poor people, so it's not going to be supplied. And then you have Republicans say, look, government-run healthcare sucks, let's never do that again, and you're set back a decade. Plus, it's just going to get repealed like it did with Trump as soon as the first Republican people come in. So it's just like, it's bad, man. It's bad.
You have to make these lasting changes, and that's why I said it goes beyond, yes, obviously you have to win the presidency, but you have to win at least the House or the Senate, if not both. And you have to get someone, if you can control all three pillars of government, then you need to, like I said, expand the Supreme Court, give these states, give DC and Puerto Rico statehood, like I said, because you have to play the game the Republicans play or you're going to keep losing because the rules are rigged against you. You have to kind of swing it back. And Joe Biden, there's a chance Joe Biden wins. I'm not going to say he's definitely going to lose, but
he could win.
What's he going to do?
He could win. It'd be interesting to see what his. I'm very curious what his VP pick is going to be. Honestly,
Kamala Harris.
You think so?
I don't know. It could be anyone, but he's going to want someone. He has the moderate wing locked down, right? So wouldn't want to be someone, either a minority, a woman, or a progressive. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, if it is someone, this is hypothetical, but like if it is Kamala Harris, like. For her to stand on stage last summer, which feels like 8 years ago, and call him racist, and then be his vice presidential nominee. That to me is like, I just couldn't vote for that. Maybe Stacey Abrams from Georgia.
Yeah, this is kind of why I hate to keep harping at it, but I just really feel like a lot of people don't have a very good understanding of why the Trump voter doesn't care about Trump's character flaws or issues, because they just see everyone as having those flaws, so they could give a damn less if they would rather have their guy with those flaws than your guy with those flaws. That's as simple as I can make that case. And so you have someone like Kamala Harris who stands up on stage and is like, hey, Joe Biden, you're a racist, how dare you? Oh wait, never mind, I will be your VP, you're a great person. Like, what? How does that make sense?
But Trump's gonna have a field day with that too. And it's like, this is the thing, is like the argument, like you said, is, well, everyone's like this. He's just vocal about it. Oh, we don't like his tweets, but it's our guy. Like, we're going to support him. Exactly. You know what I mean? And Democrats don't do that. Or they try to influence in
they try to
other ways.
Yeah, I don't really know what the Democrats do worse. I feel like they're definitely not as politically savvy as the Republican Party. I feel like the Republican Party is a lot better at sticking to the same message, and the Democratic Party tends to not have that level of, I don't want to say unity, but that level of cohesiveness for some reason. And you could make the case that that's a good thing because they have individual thinkers with individual beliefs. And so that's why it's harder for them to get behind each other. I don't know. But I'm very fascinated to see who his VP pick is going to be, if he gets swapped out by the Democratic Party, when the convention's going to be. And honestly, I'm looking forward with popcorn in my hand to the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. That's just going to be, man.
Going to be terrible.
Popcorn and a bottle for my tears. So
yeah, a couple bottles. When, gosh. But like, no one's thought about this,
dude. No, they have. That's the point. That's what's frustrating. Is it's like, this is not. No one thinks, other than like idealistic older people, in my opinion. No one thinks Joe Biden is up for this task. No one does. They just hope to God he doesn't say anything really, really dumb and sticks to his restore the soul of America line over and over. And I bet you their game plan is, hey, you keep your decorum up while Trump goes low, you go high, like last time Hillary Clinton's, thing. So
yeah, that worked out really well.
I
saw a comment on a YouTube video and it was like they were talking about Joe Biden, and the comment was it was Barack saying, "I'm going to endorse you, Joe," and Joe goes, "Okay, Mr. Mandela, I'll let him know right away." It's like that's true,
Dude, I saw there's a tweet. Joe Rogan was talking about it from Donald Trump Jr. about Joe Biden,
oh
about
God.
how he's like, I could be getting this wrong, but it's so funny. It's like he's like Joe Biden's like an internet browser with 23 tabs open. Where
Yes, I saw that.
it's so funny, dude. I died laughing. Oh my
It's
god,
true.
it's like sad funny. It's like God, come
God.
on. How did
Did
we
you
get
see the
here?
thing? It was like by Dawn, like Biden by Dawn. Have
Oh
you seen
God,
that?
no, I have not. That's funny
It's
though.
pretty bad. It's from like Hillary Clinton's like speechwriter, and it's like a bench. It says by Dawn,
Oh God.
BYDDON. It's God.
They are so full of themselves, man. I'm sorry, but the Democratic Party thinks they're like the knight in shining armor, like to rescue the day from the crazy Republicans. And like, you wish they were. I wish they were. It'd be great if they were. I mean, honestly, if it would have been Bernie, there's a couple things I definitely don't agree with Bernie on. Like, I'm pretty staunchly at this point pro-life within, I mean, not necessarily politically the same way that a lot of Republicans are, because I do allow for some nuance there, but I mean, at a certain point, I would. It's very hard for me to support any candidate that's pro-choice past a certain point because I don't know how many. The way I look at politics is what policies do I stand for, and Medicare for all is much more important to me than the belief that I have for tuition-free college, right? So I
Hmm.
weigh pros and
Hmm.
cons for each position I take, and so pro-choice is pretty, or pro-life is pretty high up there for me in terms of priorities, because if I'm right, then the killing of babies is pretty much your most basic, or at least keeping the killing of unnecessary killing of certain babies is pretty high up on that priority list. So with reading up on it, if babies do feel nerve damage by week 23, and we're trying to keep it legal till week 32, whether there's complications or not, just allow it to happen with the belief that, well, the mother and doctor will make the best decision. I don't personally, I don't like those lines of arguments. So I had plenty of criticism for Bernie Sanders, but one thing I really appreciated about him was he did stick to the issues he said he would, and he had a long history of fighting for the issues that he said he would fight for. So I knew I would be getting that. Joe Biden, I don't even know what I'm going to be getting, man. I honestly don't know, other than not.
Whatever is politically convenient.
Yeah, like that. I'm just
Really,
kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess so. Good luck, man.
right? That's what we're getting. And again, like I said, but this is the problem. I'm voting for Joe Biden, and I'm like, I guess I'll vote for Biden. And the
Yeah,
people that are voting for Trump are like, oh, can't wait, MAGA,
yeah,
keep America
exactly.
great again. It's like, of course that
Very
one's
true.
going to win.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I got to wrap it up here. But one thing I saw recently, I might have mentioned this to you on a previous podcast. I don't know because I might have actually seen it after our last podcast. But if you look at the amount of numbers where people came out to vote for Trump in the primary versus other presidential candidates, so like your early states, New
Hmm.
Hampshire, Iowa, all these states, even Super Tuesday, if you look at the total amount of people that came out and voted for Donald Trump as opposed to Obama, George W. Bush, it's not even close, man. I mean, there is so much enthusiasm for voting for Donald Trump that has never existed for any previous candidate that I don't think people understand. I actually think it's probably going to be a pretty big blowout in certain ways. And it would be super ironic if Trump won the popular vote but lost the Electoral College. I don't know why that would make me happy inside.
God,
I would
that
be
would
so
be the
happy.
worst.
We'd probably have a civil war and the end of the country would happen, but damn, would that make me happy.
Democrats wouldn't, but see, the Democrats aren't going to do anything. But that's the other thing. Well, I know you got to wrap it up, but like they're
Yeah.
so alarmist.
Oh,
It's
I
like
know.
for 4 or 5 years now, we've been hearing this is it, this is the end of the world, this is
It.
the end
It's
of the
over.
world.
It's over.
Oh,
We
here
can't
we are. We're
just,
still here.
yeah.
The economy
Well,
was doing relatively well until the
yeah.
coronavirus pandemic. So,
I honestly, that case right there, I think is a great note to end on, because I think a lot of your average apolitical people who don't follow politics because they just don't like it, and for good reason a lot of time, I really think that they're turned off from the Democratic Party because of how much outrage they constantly have, and they're like, well, we seem to be doing pretty well, so what are you guys mad about all the time? Like, okay, Trump did something and he's destroying the norms and the institutions we have, yada yada. I don't know what the hell all
mhm.
that means. I'm making more money. The economy looks good, and you guys are mad all the time because he tweeted something I actually think is kind of funny, but you guys say it's mean. So now I'm supposed to be mad.
there's a huge disconnect, I feel like, between the Democratic Party and understanding your average person's take on their outrage that they constantly seem to have.
Right. I agree.
Man, well,
we're so screwed.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. So I don't have anything else to say. Well, like I said, for those that are still listening at this point, which is probably 2 of you.
All of you.
All of you. All of you. That's a better answer. All of you. We will be releasing videos or audio for the time being until we can start doing videos every Monday, first thing Monday mornings for most of those. And we are trying to work on incorporating maybe some more elements where we interact with people that listen a little bit easier in terms of maybe some questions or maybe topics that people want to hear about. So stay tuned for that as well.
A mailbag.
Mailbag. Yeah. There you go. That would be great.
I like it.
It's beer of the week.
Sycamore Mountain Candy sucks.
Yeah.
That's the mailbag.
Yeah, for real.
Bring Lee on the podcast from Katie Byers.
We do need to get Lee on. Yeah. See
now Lee has one political stance, and it's about student loan debt. Lee, I'll tell you this offline. Never mind. I'll let it wrap up.
That's funny. Yeah, so I ain't got anything else though. So unless you do, wrap it up.
Let's just be angry for the next week.
That sounds great. I love being angry.
It's cool. Can't wait. Woo. Yep, I know you do.